Welcome to Steph Looks. Check 2. Check a 1 and a 2. Hi. Welcome to Steph Looks. I'm Steffi. Today I want to try something a little bit different. Instead of just watching and reacting to a movie that I have or haven't seen, I wanted to talk about a movie today. And this time I wanted to talk about one of my favorite movies and probably one of the greatest movies of all time ever, The Godfather. And I wrote a script because I will ramble if I don't. I've gone over the script a few times and I've included some of my ramblings in the script. Well, every time I watch the movie, it feels like I'm watching it for the first time. I've probably seen it at least a dozen times. And if there was such a thing, if there could be such a thing, I would say The Godfather and probably The Godfather Part 2 could be considered perfect movies. Some people even think the second one outdid the first. And I'm not going to go over the entire movie because you could dedicate an entire channel to just The Godfather. There are a couple out there. But I am going to dive into a couple of sequences in the movie that highlights Francis Ford Coppola as one of the greatest directors of all time, one of the greatest storytellers of all time. And we're going to throw in some interesting Godfather facts here too. So let's start with Act 1. In the first sequence of this 3-hour film, after that iconic score by Nino Rota, it's simple yet so effective. So the first sequence is Connie Corleone's wedding to Carlo. Carlo, by the way, comes off as an even bigger jackass in the book. Fuck Carlo. During the wedding sequence, Don Corleone is spending much of his time in his office answering to favors of his friends and godchildren. Not all of his time. He's kind of going back and forth between the wedding and his office because everyone knows a Sicilian cannot refuse a favor on the day of his daughter's wedding. So local mortician Bonasera, he wants Don Corleone to kill the men who attacked his daughter. Bear with me. This is kind of important. I'm breaking down this scene here. So it starts out, Bonasera wants the Don to kill the men who attacked his daughter, but the Don refuses to kill anyone.
That I cannot do.
Since Bonasera's daughter is alive and the Godfather doesn't think the punishment fits the crime. So the Don, he talks to Bonasera about friendship and respect. And he tells Bonasera that if he became the Don's friend, if you became my friend, if he became a friend of the Don's, then his enemies become the Don's enemies.
He'd come to me in friendship. Then the scum that ruined your daughter would be suffering this very day. And if by chance an honest man like yourself should make enemies, then he would become my enemies. And then they would fear you.
Bonasera, knowing that he will someday regret this next moment, he practically begs the Godfather to be his friend and kisses his hand. Don Corleone gains favor with the mortician, a favor which the Godfather will later redeem when Sonny is murdered. So far, we're only in the first scene. We know Don Corleone is a very powerful man that commands respect, similar to that of the kings. Just by being there, Don Corleone passes the task of breaking some kneecaps off to Clemenza and makes a point of telling his consigliere, Tom Hagen, that they're not murderers. They're not murderers. Despite what this mortician thinks. We're not murderers. So get some guys that won't lose control, because we don't want to accidentally kill anyone. So meanwhile, outside, the Godfather's youngest son, Michael, played by Al Pacino, and his girlfriend, Kay Adams, played by Diane Keaton, they're hanging out there at the wedding party. And Kay is watching Luca Brasi literally practicing his lines. They had him do this because, this guy can't act. The way he delivers his lines.
I'm grateful that you have invited me to your daughter's wedding. On the day of your daughter's wedding.
That's how he actually delivered the lines. That wasn't just like, that was him actually trying to act. So they threw in, like, let's have him practice saying this to the Don. So that way it kind of plays off a little funnier. It was great. I saw that in an interview recently too. I'm rambling. You're off script. So Kay is watching Luca Brasi practicing his lines, and Michael, in passing, says, "Yeah, Luca's a scary guy."
He's a very scary guy.
You have no idea. So later on, in the wedding party, super famous teen heartthrob Johnny Fontaine shows up. Oh my God. Johnny's there. The bride is happy. All the girls at the party are like going crazy for this guy. Johnny Fontaine, he's in the book a whole lot more. But because everyone thought Fontaine's character was based on Frank Sinatra, there was a lot of backlash. So ultimately Fontaine's scenes were cut, but that's fine because a lot of those scenes were mostly about Lucy Mancini going to Vegas and having an affair with a plastic surgeon who does work on her. He does some work on her downstairs on the old vag. You know, make it like new. Oh, and also Johnny Fontaine has warts on his throat. We're still on the day of Connie's wedding. Kay sees Johnny Fontaine and is starstruck and winds up convincing Michael to tell her how Michael's father, the Don, helped make Johnny famous. This is important because this is a great setup because first we've seen, the very first scene we saw the Don can be an intimidating guy. And now we're about to hear a story about him that makes him even scarier. So Michael tells her that Don Corleone was trying to get Johnny Fontaine out of his current contract at the time. So the Don goes to Johnny's boss, the band leader, and he offers him $10,000. Like, I'll give you $10,000 to let Johnny out of his contract. And the band leader's like, no, go fuck yourself. So the Don goes back. In the book, he goes back with two people. He goes back with Luca Brasi and his consigliere at the time, Genco Abendando. But I'm going to leave him out because he's not in the... Well, they leave him out of the story anyways. So he goes back the next day with Luca Brasi, and this time the band leader does let Johnny out of his contract, but this time for only $1,000. When asked how the Don did it for so cheap, this time we hear the line,
My father made him an offer he couldn't refuse.
the offer being release the contract or die.
That's a true story.
But Michael assures Kay that he's not like this. He's not violent like his family. And at the time Michael says this is true. Michael, it's a point of pride for him that he is not part of the criminal enterprise of the Corleones. And this is just all set up too. Like, I'm leaving out a lot of stuff. I'm not even talking about Sonny and Lucy Mancini getting it on. Now we know that the Don could be a killer. Still on the wedding, later on that day, Fontaine, he's entertained the audience, and now he's having an audience with Don Corleone. He's asking the Don to help get him a part in a movie. Don Corleone, he's kind of a fan. He's like, he admires his godson.
He's a good godson.
He's like, yeah, okay. No problem. Give me like a month and, the producer will call you. And Johnny's like, no, they start filming next week. So we hear that iconic line again, less than 5 minutes after we hear it the first time.
Too late. They start shooting in a week.
I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
Imagine the lesser impact this line would have had if Al Pacino didn't just tell us his dad may or may not be a cold-blooded killer. So we're nearing the end of Act 1. The Don sends his lawyer and adopted son, Tom Hagen, his consigliere, and adopted son, Tom Hagen, out to broker a deal with this producer to get Johnny the part in the movie. Hagen is making offers left and right to, for something in return for giving Johnny the part. Like, he'll help with union strikes, or there's this actor that has switched from pot to heroin. We can help you with that actor, get them clean. But this very racist producer really hates Italians.
I don't care how many Dago, Guinea, what, greaseball, goombas.
So, but this producer, he's got a personal grudge against Johnny because Johnny slept with the producer's top protege actress and she took off, made the producer look bad. So the producer's a little butthurt. Not going to give Johnny the part. He explains all this to Tom Hagen, but not before casually showing off his brand new racehorse that he just bought. Oh yeah, this horse, look at this thing. But this producer's not gonna race this horse. He's gonna put it to stud. They totally leave this part out of the movie, which I think would have made the next scene, what's coming up, even more impactful if they so all he says in the movie is he's going to put the horse to stud, but in the book he's going on and on. He's telling Tom Hagen that he's going to breed this horse. Yeah, he's putting it to stud. He's going to breed it, make a whole bunch of little baby race horses and sell them off and make a lot of money. So in the book he's bragging about this. He's he totally thinks he's better than Tom Hagen. Make a bunch of other prize race horses to sell, make some bank from the sperm bank. Anyway, so the producer is adamant that Johnny will never work on this movie. He's like, nope, fuck Johnny. The next scene is one of the most iconic in film history, and it's done in a single take. You see what happens when you refuse an offer from Don Corleone so disrespectfully. So the producer finds the horse under the blanket and he's screaming because it's an actual horse head. So they practice with a fake one. So when the actor moves the blanket, he's expecting a fake horse head, but he gets a real one that they got at the dog food factory. So we're listening to actor John Marley's actual screams of terror as we dissolve into the serene face of Don Corleone and enter into Act 2. Without the word mafia or crime boss uttered even once. They said Godfather, yeah, but maybe he's just a godfather. A lot of the first act, there's some exposition and dialogue, but there is a lot of show don't tell. Technically, I think the whole first 35 minutes of The Godfather, 34 and a half minutes, could be a standalone film about this Sicilian family man who is so respected that some people kiss his hands just to show how much they respect him. But if you disrespect him, you really, really should be scared. I think it's pronounced Coppola, but I tend to do it all different ways. So producer Robert Evans wanted an Italian-American to direct the film. Several established directors like Sergio Leone and Peter Bogdanovich, they were approached to direct The Godfather. But Sergio had his own gangster movie to make, and Bogdanovich, he didn't really like gangster movies, so he didn't do it. So finally Evans got word from his assistant about this Italian-American filmmaker, film school graduate, who has also directed a couple films already. His name is Francis Ford Coppola, or Coppola. So after Coppola was approached about directing The Godfather, he was on the fence at first because he didn't really like the book. He thought parts of it were kind of sensationalist and kind of lewd, which, yeah, that part I mentioned before about that was left out with Johnny Fontane and Lucy Mancini, yeah. Because there's a full description of what goes on when she gets her downstairs worked on. And then the surgeon, who's also her lover, is touching her while she's knocked out. So Coppola didn't want to do the movie at first. But then it was none other than George Lucas himself, Mr. Star Wars Sandman. He convinced Coppola to take the gig because George is like, hey, Francis, we started this little movie studio together and we're $400,000 in the hole. So we need every job we can get right now. So Coppola's like, okay, I guess I'll do it. So once he becomes director of The Godfather and he starts to break down the book to adapt it to film, he became immersed with the story. He wanted to stay as true to the book as possible, which for the most part he ultimately did. And aside from the Johnny Fontane storyline, and Lucy Mancini storyline, they're very minor changes in the movie. But it was not easy to do it this way. Coppola He had a better time selling the movie to executives as a story about a family and a metaphor for capitalism than he did about selling it as a gangster movie. But ultimately, the movie is more of a family film. The gangster part is just kind of like what they do. And this was also the first time that a gangster movie was told as an emotional family drama. It was very close to the book, so close that Coppola himself has said,
wrote the script from this, but the script was really an unnecessary document. I didn't even need a script because I could have made the movie just from this notebook.
Side note, I just found this out after listening to The Godfather on Audible, not a sponsor. So Mario Puzo's son, Anthony Puzo, he wrote and narrates an appendix or an afterword for The Godfather on the 2012 edition of The Godfather, I think is when this one came out. So he says that when Mario Puzo was charged with writing The Godfather 2, the screenplay, Coppola wrote the screenplay to the first one. So Don Mario had never really learned to write a screenplay before The Godfather 2. So he picked up a book on how to write a screenplay. I think it was called The Ultimate Guide to Screenwriting or something like that. And the very first chapter of the book says that the screenplay to The Godfather is probably one of the greatest screenplays ever written. So Puzo threw that book out. He was done with that one. That was just a side note I learned the other day. I thought that was interesting. So anyway, in the late 60s, mafia-centered movies weren't bankable. Just about any gangster movie before The Godfather also usually starred non-Italian actors, and the characters were usually in some form of stereotype. And he will admit himself that everything that makes the movie what it is from the book, which are both just steeped in rich Italian and Sicilian culture and no stereotypes. Well, I suppose like nowadays you could say an Italian stereotype is an Italian gangster, but that's because of The Godfather. Ultimately, Coppola wanted to make a movie about a family more than anything. And The Godfather was one of the first to authentically show Italian family culture. So The Godfather is a film where Francis Ford Coppola spent many, many consecutive days just fighting to keep the film true to the book, true to how it came out, because it could have been very different. From the dialogue to the Italian mafia to the 1940s, Coppola had to fight to keep all of it. Let's talk about the daily struggle on how this could have been a much different movie. The Godfather almost wasn't even made, and even after it got the green light, Coppola still had literal daily hurdles of studio executives wanting various changes. Oh, I almost forgot. So my grocery store in my little town, I'm a little bummed. They didn't have any Coppola wines, or I would have got it. So I got the closest thing I could find. And it's called 19 Crimes, and this one has Snoop Dogg on the label. A Cali Red. But yeah, 19 Crimes. I couldn't find a bottle of Coppola wine at my grocery store because my town has one grocery store. The next one is 45 miles away. So get what you get. Forgot about my bracelet. The studio didn't want either Brando or Pacino. Neither one of them. The studio wanted a Robert Redford type as Michael Corleone. And they didn't think Al Pacino had the looks to be a star. So the studio, they convinced Coppola to screen test several different actors to play the role of Michael Corleone, including James Caan, who would later go on to play Sonny. And then Martin Sheen did a screen test too. Look at that. But during all this, with all these other actors, Coppola kept making Al Pacino come back. He kept bringing him back in through multiple screen tests to the point where Al Pacino was like, dude, I really don't think they want me. Like, I think I'll just go do something else. And Coppola's like, no, you're Michael Corleone. You're gonna be Michael, god damn it. So Pacino kept going back to these screen tests. And I found this out when I was kind of researching for this video too. I found in an old video clip, oh good, I do have it. George Lucas's wife is a person, she was responsible at the time. She would take all the screen tests and edit them together, splice them into like a montage, basically, I guess. So producers could sit in their own private little screening rooms and watch basically auditions for Michael Corleone. So George Lucas's wife, I think her name's Marcia, she tells Coppola, after putting together this reel of screen tests, she tells Coppola, you need to hire Pacino.
That was Marcia Lucas, who was the editor, George's wife, who cut those tests all together. And she told me that, she said, cast Al Pacino because he undresses you with his eyes.
No Sicilian can refuse any request on his daughter's wedding day.
Yes, he does. What's going on, young Al Pacino? More on Al Pacino in a bit. If there isn't more, then I'll just cut that line out. So yeah, Martin Sheen could have been Michael Corleone. But that's not to say the studio didn't have some good ideas. Aside from claiming an unknown would be more bankable than Marlon Brando, whoever said that should be shot. But aside from that, the studio was considering a handful of possible well-known actors to play Vito Corleone. Ernest Borgnine was the favorite, along with George C. Scott and Orson Welles, which arguably I think Orson Welles could have made a pretty good Vito Corleone. It would have been different from Marlon Brando's, but I think Welles probably could have done a good job. So Mario Puzo and Coppola, they both wanted Marlon Brando. However, he spent most of the late 60s with his career kind of waning, like the last few movies he did really bombed. But like John Travolta in Pulp Fiction, the Godfather would go on to revitalize Brando's career for a little while, and he would go on to appear in Superman, Apocalypse Now, and Last Tango in Paris. The bottom of my glass is dirty, but the inside is clean, I swear. Coppola was practically begging the studio. He's like, just give me something. And so, to let Coppola use Brando, the studio wanted 3 things. Brando does it for free. He does a screen test, which could be typical for a movie this size, especially if the actor is playing against type or he has a reputation on set. And I think the latter is Brando's situation. And then 3, he puts up $1 million bond to ensure his good behavior on set, which the studio ultimately forgot about. Because not only did Brando blow his screen test out of the water, he did the job for around $100,000. And he didn't have to put up the bond. But not only did Coppola have to fight to get Brando and Pacino, he also had to fight to keep the movie true to the book's timeline. The book takes place in the 40s, just after World War II, but the studio wanted to save money on the budget and make a contemporary film, have it take place in the 70s, right after Vietnam. Imagine Vito Corleone on the day of his daughter's wedding, in bell-bottoms and extra-large ruffles. Maybe the Guess Who's American Woman is playing on the radio when Sonny gets shot. But also, I think setting the movie in the 40s also helps the characters stay true to themselves. I'm off script. If it was more because the Don, Vito Corleone is very old-fashioned in his ways, and then the book it's even more apparent. It's very old-fashioned, old world is kind of, yeah. I think if the movie was set in the 70s, and it would have moved their values, I think. It would have modernized some of the values that made the characters what they were, like the core values. Don Vito, he was not a religious man, but he loved his wife. He believed in monogamy, and he also thought it was okay to beat your wife if she deserved it. But that's also one of the traits that makes Vito Corleone what he is, and the pop culture icon that we know him today. I think if the movie was set in the 70s, we would have lost a lot of that character. So imagine, this is getting more fun. I'm loosening up with the alcohol a little bit. Imagine this. You're Francis Ford Coppola. you get this job. It's a pretty cool job. You're going to film a movie, this like mafia movie, right? You know what you're going to do. You're going to work every day. You're putting in the work. You know your story. You know your script, your props. You know where those oranges are going to go in the frame. You know what your project is, all right? You know what you're doing, okay? You're an experienced director. You've done this before. Maybe not to this scale, but you've made movies before. You know what you're doing. But then every single day, you have a producer or two tapping you on the shoulder every morning at roll call so they can micromanage your project. They don't like this. They don't like that. But you tell them, no, I got this. It's going to be fine. You're going to be happy, I swear. They say you need Robert Redford as Michael Corleone. This Al Pacino guy, he doesn't look like a star. He's not an actor. He's not a star. Look how short he is. But you're like, yeah, Robert's a good actor, but I'm telling you, Al Pacino's gonna kill it. I swear to God. Then there was literally a day. During filming when Francis Ford Coppola woke up one day, getting ready to go to set, or maybe he's already on set. I don't know. But either way, there was a day when someone had to tell him, hey, Francis, this real-life mafia crime boss just started a campaign to stop the film from being made. You're like, why? Because the film might be anti-Italian. Allegedly. Can you imagine how dumbfounded Coppola must have been when he heard this? He was probably like, but my name is Coppola. The author's name is Mario Puzo. We got Pacino, Richard Castellano, Richard Conte, Abe Vigoda. More Italians in one movie, not shot in Italy, because this is the early 1970s right now. We got a whole sequence that we actually shot in Italy. How much more pro-Italian can you get? That actually happened, allegedly. Every single day, Coppola came onto set to find a new change or complaint that some executive or alleged crime boss may have had, allegedly. And he had to argue his case to keep The Godfather the way it is, which conveniently was also how Mario Puzo wanted it. So I think that helped alleviate some of the conflict Coppola was having with producers. However, there's a big however, though. Rumors were starting to spread on set that another director had been hired to replace Coppola. And if that happened, then Al Pacino would have been out, and probably so would have Marlon Brando. There's one thing that changed everything. Okay, so I don't want to go into the plot details because I tried practicing this and it took forever to just explain how we got to this scene. So I'm just going to assume that you probably have seen The Godfather, and we know that Michael is the only person that can get close enough to kill Sollozzo and the police guy McCluskey at the same time. He's the only person who can do it. I'm just assuming you've seen the movie before. We're going to talk about the restaurant scene.
So I knew just from looking at all these colors and things in the book that this was going to be a very, very important scene. And indeed it was, not only for the movie, but for Al Pacino, because it was in that scene that the executives of Paramount Pictures first caught a glimmer that maybe I had not been crazy in wanting to cast him.
It's the scene that made Pacino's career. It was also the scene that convinced executives to not fire Coppola, where they finally backed off and they're like, all right, you got the reins. We'll give you a little slack this time. But yeah, it's an extremely tense scene that I want to talk about right now. It's tense not only to watch, but to listen to Joe Mantegna on Audible read it to you is just as intense. Plus, it's Joe Mantegna. So then the scenes leading up to it. Clemenza, he keeps telling Michael, in the movie and in the book, you hear it several times. After you go into the bathroom and you find your gun, when you come out of the bathroom, you need to do the job as quick as possible. 2 shots each, drop the gun, get out. So you know, going in, you know, we know, the audience knows what Michael's plan is. So we're like, okay. And it's just so Hitchcockian in the way they build this tension. The whole car ride on the way to the restaurant, because they cross into New Jersey first, then they turn around and go back. So for a moment in the moment in the book they say it, but obviously he can't say it in the movie because then that would give him away. But in the book he's like, oh fuck, or did they change locations on me? But no, they make a U-turn, go back to New York. But Pacino's nonverbal cues on that car ride tells you everything he's thinking. Pacino has this great, just minute facial expressions that he makes, or just his eyes here and there. So great. But the tension in the scene is becoming palpable, especially when Michael says he needs to use the restroom.
I have to go to the bathroom.
Because we know that there is a gun in there hiding, waiting for him. We know Michael is going to come out of that bathroom firing his gun, because that's what Clemenza has been telling him to do over and over. In the book, there's this whole sequence where he's practicing to use this particular gun, so everything will go right when he actually uses it. He gets up to go to the bathroom. Sollozzo's grabbing Michael's junk. He does it in the book too. It's not just for the movie. He's checking his junk. He's frisking Michael, even though he has no reason to. Because at this point, if we remember, in this point in the movie, Michael still doesn't have anything to do with the family business. So in this scene, Sollozzo and McCluskey, they think they're safe. They have no idea what's about to happen, because as far as they're concerned, Michael has nothing to do with the criminal business. So they're just like, whatever. Sollozzo's an Italian. McCluskey's over here eating his veal and spaghetti. Like, it's, yeah, they have no idea what's about to happen, but we, the audience, we know. We're just like gripping our seats here. Unless we've read the book, then we know what's going to happen. But Michael, he goes into the bathroom, and in the book, he takes a quick shit, and then he looks for the gun. Or he looks for the gun for, either way, in the book, he takes a quick poop. So he finds his gun. He's wiping the sweat off his forehead because he's about to do murder. He's never done this before. You almost forget that because he's just so... And in the book, it happens this too. Michael, he's surprised at how cool and collected he can remain throughout this. But there's no music in this scene. It's such a tense scene, but there is no music. Instead, as he's leaving the bathroom, we hear the sound of the train passing. It crescendos as he's leaving the bathroom. When Michael comes out of the bathroom and doesn't immediately fire his gun, like he had been repeatedly told to do so, the audience at first doesn't quite know what to think, because they're like, wasn't he supposed to fire? It's as if you're expecting a jump scare, but it doesn't happen. Not when you think it's going to. He's like, he moves back to his desk. The train kind of fades into a dull hum, and it's perfectly representative of what's going on in Michael's head. First it's loud, you almost can't think through it, then it gets calm. It becomes like this dull roar in the back of his mind. He knows what he has to do. He has blinders on, that's what I'm trying to think of, blinders. It signifies Michael's heightened senses in this moment, and it fades into a dull hum as he retakes his seat at the table. Michael's face as Sollozzo is talking again. It tells you everything he's thinking. His eyes are darting everywhere. He can't meet Sollozzo in the eye. He's not really listening. He can't listen. He's highly aware of the gun in his waistband. The camera pulls into a close-up of Pacino's face, and the roar of the train comes back into focus. Michael Corleone is about to make his bones. You're left feeling a sense of relief as he completes his task and gets into the getaway car and drives away. 20 minutes later, he's on a boat. 2 hours later, he's at sea. By Francis Ford Coppola sticking to his guns, he was able to create what many consider the greatest movie ever made. All of my ramblings, it's all of this and so much more that makes Francis Ford Coppola one of the greatest storytellers of all time, probably one of the most important film directors that we've ever had. So that is this ultimately: stick to your guns for your art. Don't let anybody tell you what your art should or should not be. I rambled. I was a little nervous. I've never done anything like this before. I hope it doesn't come off too rambly. I started to relax a little once I remembered that, oh, I have wine sitting right here. So I feel a little better. I wish I started drinking sooner. This has been me talking about The Godfather. What's your favorite Coppola movie? Leave a comment down below. Let me know. Thank you for watching, especially if you have made it this far into the video. A thumbs up is always appreciated, and click subscribe. Leave a comment down below. Check out my channel. I have mostly movie reactions on my channel right now. However, I really enjoyed making this video, and I think I will definitely do more. I just don't think it will be as often as movie reactions. We'll see. It's just kind of doing it by ear right now. I watched hours and hours of interviews with Coppola and Mario Puzo. It was so fun to do. Like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you want more, and I will see you at the next movie.